Hi there. We've benefited across the high rainfall zone from RGT Planet, a barley variety that many of us have grown with great success over these last 6 or 7 years. But there's a problem, and that problem is that with widespread cultivation across those regions from east to west, we now have more and more issues with net form of net blotch, and that's our problem. It comes at the same time as the fact that that particular pathogen, net form of net blotch, is beginning to overcome our fungicides that we use in our armoury. Case in point, this is Planet with net form of net blotch, covering flag -1. Issue is though that this comes from a plot that's had 4 units of fungicide. So what can we do about it? Well, broadly speaking, we need something to share the limelight with RGT Planet. In other words, we need more than one high yielding variety in the region. We can also avoid planting planet on planet. Planet on planet stubbles is just going to ask for trouble. We also know on this site here that Anzac Day sowings late April have got considerably more disease pressure than if we had delayed our sowing into May. If we're going to make good use of Planet in the future, then we probably, if we're experiencing problems with net form and net blotch, need some kind of support up front, whether that be a seed treatment or something like a uniform in furrow. We need something to dampen down that pressure, and any of those integrated disease management tools, such as strategic stubble management, to reduce our disease pressure. But as well as looking after the management of Planet in the future, the other thing that we can do is we can look to see what cultivars are coming through. And we've had a number of years where really there hasn't been very much material that's better than Planet. But we're going to go and join Darcy now, because for the first time in these last couple of years, we're beginning to see varieties coming through that have actually got that same yield potential.
So in Far Australia's industry innovation trials, which include the Germplasm Evaluation Network, or GEN trials as we call it, we've been able to identify a lot of new germplasm coming through that might be of interest. So if you're looking for varieties with more net form of net blotch resistance, the variety I'm holding here and the plot next to me are great candidates. So Minotaur and Fandango, which I'm holding, both show really good natural resistance to net form of net blotch. So in this trial where we grow with and without fungicide, we're able to demonstrate that really well. Unlike Planet, they do have a lot more real estate to let in some other diseases though, so you may have to manage these for diseases like scald or leaf rust. So another barley variety that we've identified in these trials, and we've been growing this since 2022, is this variety here, Neo. So although it's not as resistant to net form of net blotch as something like Minotaur, it is a lot better than RGT Planet. Its main claim to fame though is that it's high yielding. So it's the highest yielding variety at several of our sites last year, and it's looking pretty good this year too. The only thing to watch out for it is perhaps some late leaf rust coming into it. All right, so here we've got 3 more varieties that we're really excited about. So on the far left, we've got the RAGT line RP19034. This coded European line in the middle, that FAR, it's fresh out of Europe, FAR's multiplied it up from quarantine. And the intergrain line here, IGB21130. The thing they've got in common, they're all great on disease, so really good natural disease resistance. And although this is our first time growing the RAGT line, we don't have any yield data on that. This European line and the intergrain line, we saw yield really well last year. And if you're interested in seeing those results, feel free to follow this link which is also in the video description.
So what about wheats for this coming year? What a season. In Victoria, here in southern Victoria, we've been doing just great with RGT Croc and Annapurna have all performed extremely well. In hyper yielding, what we've been trying to do is to grow high yielding wheats with minimal fungicide input. In order to do that, we actually need really durable genetic resistance. Unfortunately, one of our chosen varieties that's performed extremely strongly since 2019 is RGT Cesario. And here's some untreated Cesario from this year, and great resistance to Septoria tritici, but actually now very susceptible to the new pathotypes of stripe rust in the region. That's a shame, because that's turned this variety, RGT Cesario, from being a very low input, high yielding variety to one that needs to have a lot of attention to detail on stripe rust management. Big Red, another great example, not as susceptible to that stripe rust pathotype 239 as Cesario, but nonetheless now just a little bit of a chink in its armour. You can definitely see it's taking some stripe rust depending on region. We know that RGT Croc really suffered badly in many regions last year with stripe rust, and its Septoria resistance has slipped over the years, but that's been a very, very good workhorse for us. Annapurna actually came through 2022 with really standing up quite well to disease pressures, whether it be stripe rust or Septoria, and it's not got the Septoria resistance that we've seen in things like RGT Cesario or Big Red, but nonetheless, actually in some regions, particularly southern New South Wales, Annapurna has done particularly well. So what have we got coming that's got good genetic resistance and has had high yields over the last 3 seasons? And this season, of course, is different because this season's turning dry. But if we go back to 2020, one of the ones that's performed really well is this one under code, which is in the process of being commercialised, AGTW 005. Keep a lookout for that one. Second highest yielding ever in hyper yielding trials in South Australia in 2021, where we did over 12 tonne with that. Good, durable disease resistance. Let's hope it's not the kiss of death for it. The other one that did extremely well last year, we've only seen 1 year of it, and FAR itself has actually multiplied this one up, and we're optimistic that this one will be commercialised in the future. We've just called it FAR WW2. But to give you some credential for it, and we've got some yield figures that we will present at the end of this video, WW2 was 1 tonne higher yielding than every other wheat on site in the very difficult 2022 season. But as I've said, actually, it's not so much now about wet La Nina seasons. This season's turned dry. And as it turns dry, one of the things that's concerning us is just how flexible these varieties will be at actually maturing in time for a drier season in the high rainfall zone. A croc has got proven pedigree in that respect. But what else has? And it's that this aspect of finishing perhaps a bit earlier in a tougher season that 2023 harvest will give us some really good insights into. And it's also something that we want to explore with some of the new candidates. And I'm going to show you just one that we're interested to see how it does. We know it won't have the legs in terms of top end yield that we've perhaps seen in some of these longer season wheats, but we're just wondering if this is a trend towards drier seasons in the high rainfall zone, whether this next variety I show you will perform strongly. Okay, this is another European, I think German bred variety in from Europe, coming through AGF seeds in very early days, so we have no yield data on it. But one of the things that's really attracted us to this wheat is the fact that it's been probably a full growth stage earlier than our mainstay high yielding wheats, such as Big Red, Cesario, Acroc, Annapurna, and the AGT W005. This line, we refer to it as 222, has that good disease resistance, and this has had no fungicide at all. Has good disease resistance. There's probably a question mark over later leaf rust, but at least you get more chance to see that coming than stripe rust, which tends to affect us earlier in the season. So we're interested in this one to see if, with a run of perhaps drier seasons, to see how strongly this might perform. Certainly got a lot more straw length, so one of the things we're looking for is its straw strength with that longer straw, but sometimes longer straw, particularly in drier times, can actually be quite useful to you. So let's see how this one goes and follow the GEN, as we call it, Germplasm Evaluation Network trials through the FAR website this year.
Yep, all good.
When it comes to milling wheats, obviously Rockstar was one of the varieties that we hoped we would see that lift in performance with. And yes, the yield potential is there, but unfortunately with no fungicide at all this year again, in 2023, we've been badly affected by stripe rust. I suppose the other one that we identified very early in HYC back in 2020 has now become Wallora, but we've been carrying on in code since 2020 within HYC. You can see obviously later to mature than Rockstar, although obviously the stripe rust is meaning that that's racing towards maturity. But Wallora with no fungicide has also been quite disappointing in terms of its disease resistance when you're in the true high rainfall zone. Certainly Septoria has been an issue, stripe rust has been an issue, and we have also had reports of powdery as well, although it's not an issue on site here. I think one of the ones that comes out then from that is the variety Genie, which we're carrying here under the code from Intergrain 6754. We've no data on it so far. It doesn't appear to be as stripe rust susceptible as Rockstar, but it's certainly not resistant to stripe rust in the scenarios that we've seen it so far. So it's not going to be a clean crop and Rockstar a dirty crop. This is modest improvement in Eastern States stripe rust scenario.